Test, test.
Okay. You know, there's 8 people wanting to know about the next tour.
Okay, yeah, we're ready to go.
So
Just
I've
so,
got a little proposal for us to.
just so committee members know, when your red light on your microphone is on, that means you're being, your voice is being broadcast, and when it's switched off, it's not. So we want your red lights on.
I still contend it'd be a good forum for us to.
I'm going to call to order the meeting of March 8th, 2017 of the Natural Resource Committee.
All right.
What I would like to do, starting on our left, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. We've got several people in the audience today, and so if you would start.
Yeah, my name is Matt Cole.
Nancy Broshot.
Hi, I'm Trent Warnes.
I'm Doug Neely,
Bill Clark.
Dorothy Dalsred.
Jerry Herman.
and we're in the Natural Resource Committee. We do not have minutes from the last meeting to approve at this point, but we have several people who wish to make presentations. We've got 2 that have requested additional time, and I will do that, and I'll hold them just for a minute and ask Paul Edgar and Mike Mitchell to come on forward to discuss what they want to discuss.
Doug, mine has to do with the dark sky ordinance, and I'd kind of like to hear what the discussion
Oh,
is.
fine.
whether or not-
We can bring you up later. Okay, yeah, that'd be fine.
Hi, I'm Paul Edgar, Kenema neighborhood area, and long involved into geologic hazards, natural resources, and just plain protecting our resources that we have there.
Paul, before you start, I've got gave you copies of Paul's email to me on geologic hazards that I got last week, so you have a copy of that.
Kenema was platted in 1865, flat platted. Didn't worry about creeks, didn't worry about contours, didn't worry about anything. But what they did was they created legal lots of record in 1865 for the whole area. And so those legal lots of record also have right on top of them some Dogami comes along with LIDAR, kind of x-rays the hill, and all of a sudden we've got LIDAR map landslide conditions. They rate it and say we have highest susceptibility to both deep and shallow landslides on some of these hillsides. Right in front of my house on 211, I have Coffee Creek running down through part of my property, but I have we own Block 50, which is right off of South End Road on 5th Avenue. When the house was Grandma's house, and when we bought it from Grandma told us that she had been born in the house and lived to 103.
Wow.
She bought it from her mother. There's a big rock there. Grandma said, don't play with the hillside. My house front porch looks right down on 4th and Ganong. And so there's a big rock up there that's probably 2 or 3 tons, maybe more. The toe of the landslide, it got exposed when there was a landslide right in front of my house, and it went straight down and stacked up right on 4th and Ganong. And there's a kind of a hump there with some trees growing on it now. But this big rock, if it breaks loose, will make it to the Willamette River. And anything that's in its way, houses, cars, people, or anything else, it's going to go through them. So, we know we've got a fault running right through the lower part of Oregon City. And if you go to the Dogami website, they'll point it out. And so what we have to do is worry about, now we've got landslide Dogami doing some really terrific work, and they've done they've got a detailed report on the topologies and everything about the geology about Oregon City that was done, I think, probably in conjunction with Portland State. But the key to this is that we now need to get into our code the ability to identify dogami, and it's not in any of our geologic hazard code. There is even great code that's available now from the city of Salem, model code, that could help us with some of the stuff. And we should also probably talk to Dr. Burns and some of the people at Bill Burns at Dogami and see what they can do. But our problem is, if somebody wants to develop a house right next to below me on 4th and Ganong, and they start cutting into the toe of the landslide hill, what do we do? What do we say? And yet, at the same time, I know in my case, we've got a landslide right basically in my front yard. And so we have all of these building or development opportunities coming up. We have another one right at 4th and Miller. The slope is 35% plus, and it's identified as a Dogami landslide susceptibility area. So these are geologic hazards that are important to all of us. And I think that these types of things should be reviewed by the Natural Resources Committee. Everybody's telling us we're waiting for the big one. I would like my house to stay where it is, okay? And I would like all the people below me to live. So I think it's behooved on all of us that we start thinking smarter. Now, I'd like to turn to something that I just brought to you today. And again, this is another kind of change of thing. Kanema is in an area where we've got creeks percolating out everywhere, water percolating. By the way, is a nice grease to landslides. But it also we had a historic Kanema waterworks before Kanema became a city, part of Oregon City, annexed. And they built big water tanks in there, and I put in there the description of the tanks. In fact, I took Jerry Herman up there one day so he could actually see the tanks up on the hill. And this water now percolates down, and in our nomination document to become a National Register Historic District, they spell it out. They say this water comes up, they describe the tanks, and it came down and created a wetland. Well, that wetland is a historically identified wetland. Somebody buys the lots. They say, well, I want to put a house on it. Well, there's no water identified there. Well, it wasn't mapped by error, and yet there is a wetland. So they realized we better go to the Division of State Lands. They go in, check it out, and they help with the landowner delineate a boundary around that wetlands. But that wetlands in a previous, in the last 15 years or so, when we had a major water event, it got so deep in that area that it flooded over. And right now there's only a 6-inch pipe, and they illegally put a pipe in all the way down from that wetlands down without any permits, and the pipe is not large enough in diameter to handle the amount of water that needs to go through it in an extreme water event. So it flooded up so high in this gully that it flooded into the basements of some of the houses on the crest of 4th Avenue. So that's just kind of a reality of what we have. So we have a wetlands, and because it was not mapped, a builder wants to build right up to the wetlands boundary, because if normally on our code there would be a setback requirement, okay? But because it was not mapped, the setback requirement is said doesn't exist. There is no requirement of them to do it. So what we're really hoping is that we can think together about what is reasonable. If we have in our code, and it's reasonable to have setbacks from water from a wetland, why wouldn't we want to have it? It's like a setback from a road or from a property line. But this is water of the state, now that it's been delineated by the state of Oregon, and the water that flows from it is waters of the state. Those waters of the state have unique responsibilities for us to not pollute them, to be responsible, to be stewards of them. And that's all I'm asking is how can we get a hold of this unique area? We have right below this on 3rd and Apperson, a house sits up right next to some old steps, and water percolates. The landowner, there's so much water pressure of water coming out, he built his own water spout, and it shoots up and down like this right there, and it's done naturally, just out of water that's percolating out of the hillside. Right across from my house on 5th and Ganong, I have a big pond, and it once was 15 feet deep with some silt and stuff like that now in it, but it's always full of water year in, year out, even in the driest periods, and it's just water coming off the hill. I have a creek between my house and my garage, and it comes out of a naturally occurring spring just above a house on 202. And we've got a full creek bed, and I've got a couple little bridges across that creek so I can get to my garage. And these are just water coming out. We need to get a control of this thing. We need to understand what it is. We've got all of these legal lots of record. We've got people wanting to build on hillsides greater than 25%, 35% in some cases. We've got potential of catastrophic things happening, and 99% of it all falls within the realm of what the Natural Resources Committee should be thinking about, looking into, and understanding, and making sure our code is correct. Making sure that if there's something we need to do to get a hold of this, that we're doing what we need to do. And, you know, this is kind of my pitch to say, please help us be good stewards of what God gave us, and where I'm living right in the middle of it. By the way, it was like today my wife was calling in a bunch of deer right in my front yard, and she throws out some apples to them, and these are some, I guess, that come back and know that, so my wife talks to them. So it's a beautiful place. We love it, but I'd like to make sure that it doesn't slide down the hill, and I'd like to make sure it's not abused.
We're going to take some time to talk to staff before we have our own discussion about this. I hope the cougars aren't following the deer to your feeding place.
They are.
In any case, I would guess so. Anyway,
That's okay.
First of all, to my best of my knowledge, you used Ogami, do you not?
Yes, we do.
I mean, this is familiar to staff.
We have adopted multiple revisions to the Geologic Hazard Code, most recently 2010, I believe, when you were mayor. And we updated the definition of what a geologic hazard is, and we also adopted new 200-foot review buffer from the edge of a known landslide, and we already had the 50-foot buffer from the edge of a 25% slope. So that is the capture area for review, but in addition to that, a geologic hazard is considered any area that is identified by a suitably qualified engineer or geologist that is defined as prone to geologic hazard. It doesn't just, we only review things in this area. There are multiple occasions where you find stuff through subsurface investigation that requires further study and further engineering and technical amelioration or mitigation. So there's been a lot more focus placed on the information available from Dogami that is incorporated in the RGIS, We have those layers in addition to our own, which I was sorry if I was distracting people, but we have our overlay district, which is this large yellow zone. New construction or significant fill or grading within that overlay zone must meet the code. There are lots of record, and people have a pre-existing right to build on them pursuant to that code. And if we do not permit that type of construction, it can be considered a takings. So there's an important consideration.
I'm going to mention
there.
something. The code need not be the only issue.
No.
The reason I ever ran for the commission was because of the building on steep slopes in Mill Creek Canyon.
Okay.
And I was a citizen testifying. Well, actually, Shaw Spady did most of the testifying. But anyway, I was there supporting her efforts. Yeah. And when the city commission overturned the planning commission and told the planning commission recommended not to build on those steep slopes, the city commission decision, which was a 3-2 decision, was there was not code to cover it. However, the city attorney said that if any development poses a public hazard, whether it's covered in the code or not, it is a basis. So the code, of course, is a guiding principle. But if there are issues at any place, not only here but elsewhere, where it's clearly a public hazard, even though it's not covered in the code, it is not necessarily considered a taking.
Yeah. And there are other overlay zones in effect as well, such as the ones that protect the stream buffers and that sort of thing. Ones where there are high water tables and soil percolation issues that are not necessarily sloped or within a scarp area, but they have other hydrologic problems, and that's very common as well. So,
and I think Paul, at the goal setting session specifically, it was mentioned that they would be looking at these water features that were not previously covered. I don't know if you or Laura want to speak to that or not.
I can try and speak.
I'm going to go to bat for Laura because she had 4 meetings in a row last week and can barely talk. So what was the question, Doug, again?
Well, that actually the city's going to be looking at some of these subsequently mapped water areas that were not originally covered.
I understand that there is direction to do that.
Yeah, so you had testified at the goal setting to provide funding to look at some type of natural resources area. So just a little background, sort of stepping back. We have our natural resource overlay district, which protects the wetlands, which is primarily what you're talking about. Over the almost 14 years I've been here, the only one I could think of is this one that we found that was outside our overlay. If we find something in the overlay, it's just not identified, it's still covered by that code. This is a particular case where something looked funny, and so they had to do a little bit more research. They find a wetland. Department of State Lands was notified and came in, and there's protections for the wetland itself, but there is no vegetated corridor or buffer that Mr. Egger was referring to. And so we have a development application before Historic Review Board, but there's subsequent reviews that are needed, like a site plan design review and a geologic hazards review and all these other things. So there's a variety of applications that have yet to come before the city. So this is the first one that we've found, or that I can think of, that has been outside our overlay district. We did a comprehensive study in the 90s where we went walking around site to try and identify streams and wetlands and things like that. You did testify before the city commission at our goal setting in January, recognizing this problem, asking for some layer of protections to be applied to it. There is a timing issue because once someone applies for something, then you can't add more regulations after, so there's a no changing the goalpost thing. The comment about public safety, I haven't heard that from our lawyer, so just a little disclaimer
I was
there.
pretty sure
But-
you might talk to him. My recollection was Ed Sullivan when he was first on the serving as a lawyer to the city commission, but he specifically mentioned that those kind of denials can be made if there's a clear issue involved. So you might want to pursue that.
Yeah, I'll double back with the lawyers on that, but no doubt Ed is a phenomenal lawyer, and if he said it, it's probably right.
Well, I think it was, but I'm not 100% sure. It was at the transition time. At the time, I think he was coming on.
There.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Okay, so yes, they did recommend money. So what's happening for the budget is that all the departments put in their money, put them together, and we see we put that with these extra requests that we get. For example, the CIC also requested extra money for notifications. So we put that with all the departmental budgets, and then we see what it looks like, and then we see what falls out, whether it's city stuff or extra stuff or where we have to trim the edges. We're not to that point yet where we'll put it all together and see what that puzzle looks like. We're refining our departmental budgets. We've been directed not to increase them very much. But, so, more to come. No update on that, but I'll let you know.
Okay.
And if
But we
we were
definitely heard
to,
I don't think, of course, I think he wants something to happen probably faster than it can. But all that's a public process in any case.
Yeah, adopting
Changing
an
the zoning
overlay
code
is a big deal. More than just us locally. If you want to talk about Metro.
yeah, any overlay district regulation that we adopt, has to pass muster with Metro and with the state as well. So before it's acknowledged at Department of Land Conservation and Development, and it requires notice to every property owner in the city through a measure. It's called Measure 56. So whenever you change a land use regulation that can alter the value of property positively or negatively, that notice is required. And so it's an important thing to gear up for and not miss any aspect of code revisions. When your code is open, you can clean it up in multiple areas, not just one tiny area, and that's important as well. So it should be a fairly comprehensive revision unless it's something you know that needs to be done right away. So,
To the best of my knowledge, that code did not have, in one case or one place, say LiDAR.
no, it does refer to, I think, yeah, here,
Oh,
yeah. Our definition includes it, and we basically captures any Dogami bulletin. The process of review itself requires that the applicant's geologic engineer research Dogami's latest information, and it starts with the LiDAR data because that's what the overlay is based on. Not just the slopes, but also the landslide layers as well. So it's definitely referred to.
and take a look right there at Fifth and Miller, where there is no showing whatsoever of water in that area, and yet that's right in the map on our document showing that that's where it flooded. The ordinary high water mark for that site is way up the hill, and you shouldn't be building below the ordinary high water mark. And it flooded. The flood water went over the top of Miller Street and down between the house of 421 and 416, right through there, and then flooded down over the hillside down through there. And it gets, we only have 12 feet of asphalt, 60-foot wide right-of-ways. But the road is an old wagon roads, and they're kind of crowned. And so, but if it gets on the other side of the crown, there's no curbs, no nothing, no way to direct it. And so when water starts really flowing, we had some of these recent cloudbursts. Boy, I tell you what, it was interesting to drive around the Kenema and see where the water really goes. And it flows across onto everything, and it's not being captured in stormwater. pipes or basins. And so it's just the way it is, you know, but we need some reasonable restraint. We need people thinking smart. And if I had all of the answers or had some real good solutions, I'd be putting them before you. And it just needs some people thinking about it, working hard to come up with something. So that's all I'm asking. You know, let's just be smart, because I don't want my rock down in the Willamette River.
Well, that might happen anyway. I mean, let me ask, I'm sure if something proceeds along this line, it's going to be a type 1 decision, right?
If you're applying for development in this area,
Yeah.
it'd be at a minimum a type 2 limited land use decision with public notice and comment.
Okay.
And then
So,
that's according to our code.
And
Yeah.
a type 3 for historic review.
Historical
purposes.
review is a type 3 quasi-judicial process with a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but does the planning commission itself come into any kind of review for this kind of issue?
Only if a variance is requested from the zoning code or
Yeah,
one of the
and that won't
overlay
be the
districts.
I mean, his concern, that wouldn't be the case.
That wouldn't be the case. Typically, we're going to rely on the code, the peer review of the applicant's application by the city engineer and our engineering consultant.
Do all the neighborhood associations get alerted, though, to any type 1, type 2 review? Is that right?
Just like the NRC gets notified of all type 2 and above applications with public comments, the neighborhood association, the CIC members are now on the list, but the neighborhood chairs have always been on the list. And so there is a review process. The reason why it's not at a public hearing is because it's not as discretionary as items that go to public hearing.
Right.
But there definitely is. It's posted on our website too for the public.
But it's a case that anybody can write in comments at that particular point.
Absolutely.
And I assume the chair of your neighborhood association is aware of this particular issue.
We try very hard to keep everybody informed. One issue, though, that creek that's in the pipe should be exposed. It should be, the pipe's not adequate to handle extreme water conditions, and it's not part of any land use
Yeah,
effort right now, and it would allow the water to not flood if the creek, if it was allowed to go.
But given you say somebody installed it, I presume it's not part of a public easement.
It was installed through people's backyards,
Yeah.
through private backyards, but it's basically, according to what I understand from our public works director, that was done illegally, and it's a creek, and they were tired of it flooding around in their yards, so they decided to try to solve the problem. But do we allow people to take creeks and put them into pipes privately?
No, we don't.
Well, I beg your pardon. There's springs popping up all over Kanema that are piped right out to 99A.
We don't. I mean, now we do not permit.
No, we don't permit it.
Yes.
Right, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them existing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
you know, to me, it was like, why don't we start doing some environmentally positive things? And this is a case where we might want to try to bring nature back.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Paul talked to me about many issues, including this back, what was October or something, and he sent me the wetlands delineation of the State Lands Division. I know those people, so I wrote him a memo, basically asking him, regarding all the seeps off the hillside, did you include the consideration of those since they feed the wetland? And I thought, I'll never hear from these people. And some of the things that he provided us tonight, historic background on the waterworks and all that, I sent them that too because Paul gave it to me because it was kind of interesting. And within 30 minutes, I got a call back from the wetlands delineation specialist for them, and he said, we didn't consider the input to the wetlands. We consider the boundary of the wetland that was delineated, and that's really up to the cities to do that if they want to do that. And I said, I may be wrong. That's what he said to me, though.
Well, the protection area next to the wetland is what the city code, if it was an inventoried as part of our 1999.
Okay. But he said it's very expensive, all this stuff, and that the cities don't have the resources to do it, which is what Laura's saying, too, I think.
Well, the important thing is to distinguish when you have an inventoried resource that you're going to protect, you kind of adopt a map that goes with it.
Okay.
It's a natural dynamic environment, and so you have to provide this goalpost for an application to meet, and that's what the Title III resource in the NROD was adopted for. And then outside of that, there are some specific provisions that apply. So you've got to meet the state lands requirements.
Yeah. We've probably got one of the strongest Title III requirements in the metro region. It far exceeds the metro requirements.
Excuse me, Doug. Is there any verbiage about the accuracy or the fact that these lines don't actually exist on the ground in the code?
There is. I could show it to you if you want. Right
No,
now.
you don't have to show it to me.
Okay.
You
It
can
basically
describe
it
it to
says
me, but-
if in the course of development review a wetland is identified that is outside the city's overlay, completely outside of the overlay, then the city's review process won't be applied to it. In other words, we won't apply the buffer. That does not relieve the applicant from meeting state lands requirements and staying away from the wetland itself. And then our code also says if a wetland is discovered that is touching the buffer, then the buffer comes around the newly discovered wetland. That's what the code says. So, yeah.
Whether it's... Would you repeat that?
So, let's...
The point
yeah,
is... That
if in this purple zone here, this buffer that I'm showing on the screen, if a wetland was discovered that was touching that was not mapped, like one of these brown blobs, which is part of the 1999 inventory, then the buffer is extended around that newly discovered wetland. So if one of these blobs should move over time, which they do, or they expand or they shrink and they get closer, and then the applicant, during their on-site delineation, finds the new edge of the wetland and is required to apply the 50-foot buffer as the impact area, and the mitigation is based on that.
That's
Yeah. So
And the
there's
same, if you're inside the purple, then it automatically applies too.
Right.
So it's only if
Right.
you're not touching at all that this problem
It's only when
exists.
it's not touching
there
at
is,
all.
there's
Yeah.
that kind of flexibility, even though it's not specifically delineated at this point.
There's a little loophole if you're touching, there's no loophole if you're not touching. So yeah, it
Yeah.
can extend out. But other than that, the map is set.
So we're not, the one at 4th and Ganong, or 5th and Ganong, is not touching one of those.
Okay.
Right, currently.
Right.
And obviously it needs to be, we need to get a new wetlands mapping done where it's delineated and where we really realize how much water is generated from that, from the old Kanema Waterworks. And how it flooded. And so, yeah, all of that's just fact, and
Well, it's a lot of money you're talking about.
well,
What is the potential for further development in the Kanema area to justify that kind of study?
well, right now there's probably 7 parcels that are in the process of being put through. So right now, the one development the guy is proposing on 4th and 5th and Miller, he wants to put 7 cottage homes right in the floodplain, and it's right there right now. So and much of the area that he wants to put these houses in is an area where is below the ordinary high water mark of the flood, and yet it's not on the map.
The flood.
The floodplain's not on the map?
No, the physical fact of when it flooded because of
I'm
how
going
it,
to clarify that, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
how you could look back at where the water level got to when it flooded into the basements of these houses. So we know that it got to that level and flooded the basements.
He's got
Yeah,
his-
I mean, official floodplain is along the river and it's adopted on the floodplain map. So when you're talking flooding, we're talking about drainage issues and
Yeah.
stormwater issues.
Drainage and stormwater and the construction of the roads in that area. And I am familiar with the Kanema area. I had a contract on a property there. And because of water issues and something that the seller did that actually changed the surface water conditions and put water in the crawl space, Pete remembers this, I canceled the contract. And so I don't own Kanema and property, but I'm really familiar with the issue, and I did go look at the tanks on my own. So,
And I've seen
So
the
it's
tanks,
just,
too.
you know, it's just real, you know, and you can see that right on Fifth and Ganong. You can see the kind of the curl thing. That's that right across the street from my house. There on and right kind of in the middle of that upper loop there. But boy, I tell you what, we've got it everywhere. So between that and steep slopes and
well, it's an
Light up.
active geologic area.
it's a beauty.
And
I literally, the property I was looking at was 6 lots. I wanted to build a garage. I couldn't hardly even find 20 by 20 on the rest of the property to build a garage because of moving rocks and water.
we're gonna move on, but our staff is very familiar with the issue, and I'm sure it will be addressed in the
Interested
manner
in that,
possible.
too. Yeah, we're
I
interested.
did want to make a comment that the fault you mentioned is the Bolton fault. It went behind my house. My old house. However, I want to. People might have concerns. It apparently hasn't been active for hundreds of thousands of years. So.
But I know Dogami shows the Bolton
Yeah.
fault.
Oh, yes. That's when I found it. Looking at the maps, that's when I saw it went right behind my old house. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
I think everybody else is intending to speak at a later time then. So we'll continue on with the
We have
agenda.
presentations
Pardon?
next. We'll have presentations next.
Yeah, we'll have the presentations, and so 2 of those will be at this particular time. So, do you, I lost the pieces, but I know the people. So,
we
you want to
have,
come on forward then, introduce yourself?
Francesca and Pam.
Yeah, Jessica Pan.
I did actually want to do a public comment, Mr. Neely.
Okay, you start off with your public comment,
Yeah,
and then go on into your presentation.
Just short, it's just a comment of encouragement. I'm glad Mike Mitchell is here too. I want to talk about ivy and invasives. And I made a copy of the city, what's on the city website for the Natural Resources Committee, and it talks about enhancement of ecosystems. So I want to just bring this up. We have so much ivy in this town, among a lot of other things. And when Pam and I's work, we went street by street, but we just saw an incredible amount of ivy and other invasives. And are you all aware that Portland has a No Ivy Day? And Milwaukee has a No Ivy Day. It's really successful in Milwaukee. A lot of people turn out for it. And I was just wondering if maybe the NRC could encourage the CIC and bring the parks in with it too, and maybe the foundation might be interested, but to bring, we could do a volunteer No Ivy Day once a month for 5 years and still have work to do in this town. So I just wanted to encourage the NRC to think about that and to think about our invasives and what they're doing to our ecosystems.
Yeah, we see them all over. Now I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself formally.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Francesca Antone. I'm so pleased to see all of you. This is Pam Cromer.
And I'm Pam Cromer.
27 years in the McLaughlin neighborhood. I'm 1998, so that's getting close to 20.
I think we moved into a couple years
Yes.
before you did, right? We
Yes.
were next door neighbors. Anyway, the fault runs probably through your property.
Our basement was the sponge for it.
But don't worry.
No, we had it
Where
at,
this fault is. That's the middle of Laughlin neighborhood.
Well, thanks for letting us speak. Again, my name's Pam Cromer, and I just wrote out a little introduction of our project here. We called it the Inventory List of Notable and Possible Heritage Trees in the McLaughlin Neighborhood. Did we give them a copy? Okay.
Yeah, we have a copy.
Okay, about 10 years ago, there was a subcommittee, Pete Walter knows about it, and some of you might know, the Natural Resource Committee that I was a part of, which was called the Tree Committee. And the Tree Committee consisted of about 10 people, which were certified arborists, horticultural professors at Clackamas Community College, natural resource professionals, and landscape architects. And for approximately 2 years, this group met to review and update the Oregon City Tree Ordinance, which was finally approved by the City Commission. And chapters of that the tree ordinance included the Heritage Tree Program and provisions for a tree mitigation program and a tree bank. Now, fast forward to 2017, the purpose of the project that Francesca and I have been working on that we wanted to talk to you about is the possibility of listing, perhaps on the city's website, notable and possible heritage trees in the McLaughlin neighborhood. And this all just started from our McLaughlin Neighborhood Association meetings when people have continuously have been bringing up the idea of a tree audit, saying we need a tree audit. But there never was a group that got together to organize it. So then Francesca, who's a very active member of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Homeowners Association, constantly hikes and walks the neighborhood, and went to the City Heritage Trees website and was surprised to see there were only 3 trees listed, and there's now there's 4. So since we both live and walk in this neighborhood a lot, Francesca contacted me with an idea of inventorying perhaps not just heritage trees, but also possible inventorying trees of merit. So we set out time to start charting the trees with addresses, and we discovered that indeed there are large trees in canopy, but there are also trees in bad shape, are diseased, need pruning, trees that need to be entirely taken out. And there are places in the neighborhood where there are no trees at all. That's why you see blanks on the last pages of that inventory index. So our purpose with all this, of this inventory, is to bring to light that the Oregon City Tree Ordinance's heritage tree could be of merit, and to see if we could just spark the city in taking another look at the Heritage Tree Program to include more trees along with their care. We know that this will probably have to re-energize the community in promoting these tree projects, but we think there's a lot of enthusiasm and willingness to volunteer to help. And I just
All our
noticed
neighbors are interested.
well, and that was the fun part of this project, is people are really excited about their trees, and they talk about the history of them and why they bought them. And you know, the process was slow just because you stop and talk to people, but they don't know how to get involved. And
They also don't feel there's an incentive. They don't feel there's an incentive to.
Right.
And I'm Pete sent me some communication about at one point the planning department attempted to encourage the city commission to provide incentive, or to, what did we talk about, a grant or?
Well, we discussed the need for more than just a regulation that protects a tree, but also a carrot versus a stick. Because what the Heritage Tree program is intended to do is provide for voluntary protection. But it's hard to do that if the only thing you're doing is saying you can now no longer touch this tree
Exactly.
for perpetuity unless there's
Yes.
some disaster or disease or death or dying. So that's one aspect of it. But there are grants available potentially that the community could use to help with technical assistance or pruning and things of that nature.
I don't know if you saw the article in the
we don't have that
Oregonian
money
today about the whole charging of Portland residents for trees that are on, it's like city property,
property.
in the planting strips, and it's really complicated. Trees are planted. There's so many plants out of place, so many trees out of place just in our neighborhood. They plant them right next to their house. They get big, and they're just there's trees growing next to the stormwater drains that people have just left growing, and they're getting big. And so it's complicated.
That's right.
So, but we just wanted, we're just hoping that maybe we can, one of the reasons I went up to the assessor's office and got all the property owners, I was curious about renters and, how many, but I thought maybe we could use that information to survey these neighbors and see what they know, what they think. And I would be willing to help with that. I've created a lot of surveys. I did a big survey when I did my master's thesis, so I'm used to stuff like that. So, do you have any questions of us?
So, out of all your inventory, you weren't able. Nobody got convinced to apply for a heritage tree. Or anything
We didn't
like
talk to every property owner.
Why? But the ones that you did talk to, could get anybody on board? Or
Most people don't know about it.
okay.
That's right.
A lot of people don't even know what the trees are.
I don't doubt that.
So, we're pretty positive people, so we talked it up and encouraged people to go onto the website.
Okay.
We heard amazing stories. And there's just, you go up into the, drive down Telford and just look at those Quercus garryanas on Telford. We have amazing trees in our. But really, I think that the stewardship. I think a lot of people just need help with knowing how to be reasonable about stewardship with their trees, and we need a lot of pruning. As I'm sure if Jonathan Waverly was here today, like they just had all those oaks at Rivercrest Park come down because people have let the firs grow up through them, and it makes the trees grow wrong, so they toppled over because they were top heavy. So there's lots of stewardship that we need to, I think we could be more proactive about.
Are all these trees, are they in the like, they would be the street trees, or are they in people's yards?
No, they're in people's yards. And
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is a real passion of mine. Real passion of mine, and I want to stand and give you an applause
Yes.
for walking through these neighborhoods, because I drove through these with my mother for years, passing out. I know this Southern Magnolia on 12th. I've knocked on that door and hand delivered those people forms 3 times in their lifetime. And
do you happen to know the story about that tree? There's a story about.
No, I've. But
Anyway.
there's I got a great story about my tree. I love this stuff. However, you have a lot of really valuable information right here, and if you are a survey master, master of surveys, that's exactly what we need to find out the most questions that people have. What are the most facts? Financial obligation. What's my financial obligation? What's it going to cost me? That's the first thing. And usually you want to say, well, nothing that you're already going to be obligated anyway, because it's your tree. What you're doing is you're just giving a little bit of protection.
A big tree to get pruned,
Oh,
even if it's not serious pruning, can easily cost $3,000.
I know. There's one man who won't touch it because his
Yeah.
red
But if
oak
we
in the back
could
needs pruning.
somehow work a grant program and we could offer to cover half or, have people get on a list to, allow so many helping homeowners with big trees that need pruning, they could get on a list. Maybe, they could agree to do something to help
But first
the
we
city.
need to bring knowledge. Need to bring
Yes.
knowledge to the
When
program,
you're
and we
teaching,
don't
you
have any
pre-test
real
your students
good.
to find out what they know.
And we don't have any real good paper handout somebody when you're talking to a group.
Yeah.
And we need to. I encourage you to run a survey, and maybe put it on our neighborhood it's called the neighborhood.
Oh, the nextdoor.com.
Nextdoor.com. Maybe even get it to each one of these people in your
That's
neighborhood.
what I was thinking.
That's a big
these
mailer, and
property
that's
owners.
expensive.
Yeah.
But if you can physically, and then identify the 10 most common questions, and those are our 10 biggest
We've been
hurdles to
working
get
on
over.
that, actually.
and hail me, I'll help you.
Yeah.
But behind you 100%. But you need to be able to give knowledge to the people. I I talk to people about this all the time, but it's a huge hurdle. But they need something to hold, look at, contemplate at home, talk to their friend about it behind our backs because they're afraid. And it's not a scary program; it's a really encouraging program. But people are scared of it.
Are you?
Well,
I think there's
I
a
was going to
market.
ask you if you were. Are you doing this semi-formally with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association or not?
I just
Okay.
started walking and looking.
I'm wondering how we could get you recognized in some fashion and maybe enable you to. I don't know where we'll seek the grant fundings from. The
Metro enhancement.
huh?
This is perfect for Metro enhancement.
Well, Metro Enhancement has made a decision that some of that money is going to be committed to the Heritage Project. I mean, to the Willamette Falls Heritage Project. And so I don't know. I don't think they made a decision on how much of that's going to be. But there's not.
Well, whatever the case, then.
I
just
think
saw,
we can
but,
encourage an application.
It just seems
to
like
them.
a marketing. Seems like what's needed. You guys are both experts. I'm really impressed.
I'm not.
I know how excited you are, and I know that Pam's tenacious. She gets things done. But if you've got two things, it sounds like you're talking about. One's the quality of the existing tree canopy, and there's deterioration. That's a big issue to tackle. But to get people aware of what the value of the heritage trees are, you did a lot of that right here, and Pete's done a ton of that for Tree City USA. It seems like a marketing piece that would come forth from the neighborhood association under auspices to a Metro enhancement grant. I'm suggesting an idea here. I'd be willing to
You
help
mean
you with this.
citywide?
That would help identify why these trees are important and what the constraints are, so people know if there are constraints and what the benefits are, know that, and then what the procedure is to interface with the city. That would be a major.
Well, and McLaughlin
Help.
neighborhood is tough because our planting strips, most of our planting strips are way too narrow for a big tree.
Yeah.
And there are so many small lots. There's no way you're going to really, I mean, if I lived in one of those houses on a tiny little lot and had a huge tree next to my house,
That's not.
So
it's the new neighborhood too. Have small planting strips.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. That's true throughout the city.
I just wish we could change the code and make all new developments have wide planting strips.
But when the guidelines come out on the Metro enhancement grants, I assume they're not taking all the money for the Willamette Falls Heritage Project. We'd be happy to write a letter of support to your effort.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So, Pete, can you direct us on how that process works?
So are we talking about?
Not right now, but I mean,
Okay.
at some point, could we work with you and then come back with a survey and
Yeah,
let you see it?
Well, like anything else, you got to be directed about what you're doing. Are we talking about finding funding sources? Are we talking about changing the code? Or are we simply about getting a Metro enhancement grant to do a more detailed survey?
Well, first of all, you've done some work here, but I think in many cases you've identified the property owners, looked at the trees and saw what they were, and probably really weren't involved in talking to the people per se. Is that true?
I think I've probably talked to close to 30%.
What I would suggest is actually, in terms of if it's a survey you feel is the most important thing initially, is that you focus on what you got. And
Yes.
the McLaughlin Neighborhood
Yes.
Association to
Yes.
talk about a city-wide effort at a later date.
agree. Yeah, I
But-
absolutely agree.
What I would suggest you do is talk to Wyatt Parno, our budget manager, and the program, the Metro Enhancement Program, in terms of distribution of money, is under him, and the person that works on that will be under him, and find out when the description of the funds that are going to be available for this kind of purpose is going to be coming out. I don't know if they're going to have a meeting ahead of time to actually make the determination of how much money is going to the Legacy Project and how much is going to be money that can be applied
I don't know,
for.
but Wyatt would be the best.
Wyatt
person to talk
Parno would be
to.
probably the best person to check.
Well,
on that.
it's all under Eric Underwood now, and Leanne is the person that handles that in Michelle Benville's absence. And it's really interesting you're
is
bringing
it-
all this up because I just received a letter, as everyone else did, that the amount that they're going to award is $300,000, up to $300,000 in increments of $25,000. So if they've got other processes, but Eric Underwood's staff, Leanne,
Okay.
can give you the whole
Okay.
process and get you the packet,
Okay,
and then you know what's expected.
yeah, that's changed then. Okay.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
kind of feedback and how would you like it from us?
Well, I mean, you can tell us what you find out, but we probably wouldn't make the application. You would make the application. I'm indicating we'd be able to give you a letter of support for that application.
Okay.
Endorse it.
I think we'd be willing to give them.
I think so. I think it's a
we-
worthwhile
we-
thing.
We
Yeah.
have to take a formal vote, I suppose.
I make a motion.
We're all nodding our heads.
Well, do come back and find out what you have found out. In
Yes.
fact,
Okay. Thank you.
And note the most common questions and fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
now Jesse Buss wants to come and speak to this too. So you want to come forward?
Thank you, Francesca.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. I appreciate your tremendous work, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Jesse Buss. I live on Washington Street. I came here tonight specifically to support these ladies in their efforts because I know they've spent collectively hundreds of hours walking the streets, and this has been a labor of love for them. I can take no credit for it, but I can be here to cheer them on. I want to say that I think the letter of support that you've proposed and discussed already is a great idea, but I would ask you to go a step further because I know that the city's in the midst of the budget cycle right now, and the goals for 2017 through 2019 were just adopted. One of those is, I think, identical to these 2015 to 2017 goals, which is enhance the livability of the community. I think this project directly speaks to that goal, and through the budget cycle right now, it should be addressed now, not necessarily waiting till the Metro Enhancement Grant is up, and not till 2019 or 2018 when the next budget cycle is going through. So I also want to say that to supplement the ideas that have been discussed, when my wife and I bought our house about 5 years ago in McLaughlin, we didn't receive any notification from the city that our house was a locally designated historic structure. We knew that because we did our homework moving into the neighborhood. But about 6 months after moving into the house, I found a packet in my basement, which had been sent from the city to the previous owners of our house when they bought the house. And it said, "Welcome to the neighborhood. By the way, you're in a historic structure. Here are your responsibilities, and here are some resources." A potential goal of this project that Francesca and Pam have brought to you could include putting a notification to new owners of homes that have these trees on their land, saying not that you have a historic structure that you've just bought, but hey, you've just bought a house that has a potentially significant tree that could be listed as a heritage tree. Here are your resources for that. Just an idea. I know there's nothing like that right now, but I also want to support the idea that the city should put together some incentives for owners in order to list their trees. The trees are a public resource. They clean our air and they clean our water, and they're beautiful. The public benefits from them, so the public should help support people in the maintenance of these trees.
Yeah, the state gives credits for wood burning stoves. Seems like you ought to get credits for leaving a tree.
Right, good point. And we are, as one of you mentioned, at Tree City USA. This would be in keeping with everything that the city's wanting to do.
I'm going to make a suggestion. With the participation of us, we could do it. We could do it at public comment on the city commission. But if we organized a presentation, Pete, to the city commission on this particular issue, whether it should go to the planning, whether we should speak to the planning commission too, should be considered. But I mean, we've talked about the fact that almost no heritage trees have been brought forward and that we need to do something in that area. So I'm wondering if we could actually have a scheduled 5 minutes, well, maybe more than 5 minutes, to speak to the city commission on this particular issue.
Pete can put it as a request to the our city recorder who works with the mayor to set the schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, so Katie Riggs sets the agenda every 2 weeks
Yes.
for city commission, and we set the agenda for planning commission every 2 weeks. So both bodies would probably be interested in this.
Just recommend, again, being clear about what you're asking. Or
You've got emails where I can cut. I know I've seen emails from you, but if it's okay, see if we can actually put together a formal presentation to the city commission.
Yeah, I just want to note that this is one of our work session activities we've listed it under Goal 4 in terms of maintaining communications with citizens and facilitating citizen participation, but it also serves Goal 3, as Jesse mentioned, which is clearly that. And the activities to strengthen and encourage participation in the Heritage Tree Program, Dee Dee and I are listed. It's an ongoing activity. What needs to happen to accomplish it, we've got listed as money for incentives, further outreach, and better publicity. So this is all.
I think putting a survey on would actually be publicity for it. So
True.
So perhaps I'd recommend a work session.
A work session.
And then you can organize that before you.
A work session with the city commission itself, or
just
among
ourselves?
Here
to get organized before you go to the city commission and to sort of hammer out some of those details that are left over. What's going to be on the survey, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then you can start promoting it to the city commission, and they can sort of push that out.
Okay, we'll set up a work session. Yeah.
I'd be willing to help you if you can find a time when I'm not in McMinnville.
Okay, well, we'll set up a work session which would involve us all just to focus on this particular topic.
Great.
Can you send out, what do they call them, doodle witchamajiggers?
Doodle witchamajiggers, okay.
Doodles.
Is there a, right offhand, is there
I can do that.
A day of a week that generally works for people?
Friday's the only day I'm not in Mac, other than a weekend. So a Friday would work.
Friday
would work.
Or a Saturday or Sunday. I'm in McMinnville from
About 4 o'clock.
Monday through Thursday.
You could couple it with your next meeting.
Yeah, we could time it before or with a regular meeting as well.
Can people make the meeting early?
What do you mean?
Sometimes.
What time of day are you talking about?
We're talking before this meeting. Now.
Sure, but I mean, are scheduling another meeting?
Yes, a work session before this meeting in which we focus solely on this particular issue.
But that would be in the evening?
Well, that's what was suggested, that we could do it before this meeting. Have an hour, come in about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody?
Sure.
The library board has the chamber right before this, so it would probably have to be in a different location.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
It just-
Depends upon what I'm doing. I have lab till 4 in McMinnville, but sometimes I can get out.
We can doodle
early,
this and
sometimes
I'd
not.
encourage you
Make
to
sure
use
that-
your normal time, because then you can be in this room and get it on the video, so it's out to the public and it's on the website when you
That's
meet in
true.
other rooms. And
Well, then we
you
want to
have
set
that.
up to schedule the regular meeting later. What I'm saying is,
Yeah.
I want to have it devoted
yeah, you
strictly
start
to
the
this
regular
issue.
meeting at 8 and then the work session at 7 or you can adjourn to the work session after the regular meeting.
Does that work for
Whichever you
everybody?
Yep, sure would.
Okay.
Okay.
Depends
Set it
on how
up for
late it
next
is.
week.
So,
I mean, next month.
Next
April
month.
5th?
Okay. September, sorry.
Of course, if they're trying to go,
12.
Well, no, what I'm going to, they can pursue some of the things they want to, but I would invite the three of you to be at that work session.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Work up
Well,
a
I'm
survey.
wondering if somebody from our committee should be working with you between now and
I
then.
think it'd be a good idea. Who's going to volunteer?
I'll volunteer.
I figured Dee would.
I think there's probably a couple of us that want to volunteer with you. Because
Yeah.
all of us are different.
I'd be more than
it's-
happy to
I'd
help,
like to
but-
as I can, but I
Yeah.
don't know. Busy schedules can be pretty tight. But yeah, I'd be willing to help.
yeah, me too.
I just can't help myself.
just
So-
don't have a quorum.
Yeah,
Don't have a
no,
quorum.
That's right. I think two, no more than two.
Sure.
Only
I'll help you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
that
fine.
works.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much. May I be allowed to make a comment on Mr. Edgar's comments
Yes.
as well? I was listening to that discussion earlier about the Kenema wetlands, and I pulled Mr. Edgar aside after his comments and after the discussion just to ask a question, because he had mentioned an illegally placed 6-inch pipe in the ground, and I asked if he knew where that went, and he said it went over to the western wetland. And combining that with what Pete said about the addition of wetlands de facto if they're adjacent to existing wetlands, I'm wondering if there's an illegal pipe. If that was never put there, would these wetlands be contiguous?
Anything's
That
possible.
lawyer in here.
I was going to say, if people don't realize that Jesse West is a liar,
Thank you, that's all.
you go ahead and explore that.
Work session, did we ever come up with the time?
It's on the 12th.
Of April? That's right, Wednesday.
Oh,
Sorry.
somehow we went off screen. Oh, yeah, of course we did. Okay. All right, now going on to, I take it there are no more public comments. We got all the public comments we want to deal with here. So we'll go directly into our new business discussion items, the dark sky ordinance. And you want to take the lead on this?
I'm going to let Pete
Okay.
speak to this. I did do a little handout here for the group, which I gave to him, of what Shaw shared with me. That whole thing came about, the dark sky concerns. I'll pass it down, because of Shaw Spady's initiative when she was on this committee about 3 years ago. And I'll let you look at that while Pete talks here.
Okay, I gave you a copy of the existing section of our site plan and design review code that deals with outdoor lighting. And I included the main section of the code that what the site plan and design review criteria apply to currently is applied to all development in zones except for residential zones. And by that I mean it does apply to multifamily and commercial and industrial development and institutional development like the community college and those sorts of things. So we adopted an outdoor lighting code in 2008, and that's what's currently on the books. And I think some of the concerns have to do with what the code applies to and what it doesn't apply to. There are some exemptions from this lighting code, which are listed on page 2 under section 3, accepted lighting. And that includes residential lighting for single-family attached and detached homes and duplexes, public street and right-of-way lighting, decorative seasonal lighting, temporary lighting for emergency or nighttime work and construction, temporary lighting for theatrical, television, and performance areas or special public events, special lighting for special districts for art purposes, like lighting up the municipal elevator and that sort of thing. And then lighting required by the Federal Aviation Administration are considered accepted lighting. So that means that street lighting is not going to be regulated under the lighting code either. And PGE controls the lights on the streets and have switched the street lights in the city. PGE has specifications for those. And a lot of those were recently switched out for the new technology, LEDs, which are low energy uses. And this code was written pre-LED, so I know that there's some potential concern about the quality of light of LED lighting and whether or not that is exceeding these standards. What I can tell you is that when we apply these standards, we require a photometric plan be submitted for the property, and it has to specify the foot candle levels, which is a light level. A lot of light levels are specified in lumens, and if the light levels are specified in lumens, we ask them to have a photometric engineer translate those into foot candles so that we can determine whether they meet our foot candle levels that are required in our code. Generally, you're not allowed to light beyond 0.5 foot candles at the property line, and then there's some additional requirements in here that require that individual bulbs that exceed a certain amount of lumens have to be full cutoff fixtures, where that means that you can't see the bulb below the horizontal plane, and it has to be downward pointed. There's maximum height limits on lighting poles for multifamily of 25 feet. And then some other things to require as far as that. We get into how certain types of areas are lit to a minimum level, such as pedestrian walkways and parking lots have to be lit to a minimum level of half a foot candle. And then you get into what are called pedestrian access ways, which are publicly maintained access ways from the ends of cul-de-sacs and things. Building entrances have to be lit to 3 foot candles, bicycle parking areas 3 foot candles, and then you have to meet this maximum to minimum ratio so that you don't have this wide glare range and an average over the entire area. We don't require that, with the exception of these areas, we don't require that areas be lit for security. But they're there to ensure that if areas are lit, that they don't overlight the areas. The International Dark Sky Association is a nonprofit organization that provides a lot of resources. They recommend certain types of lighting fixtures. If consumers are looking for individual lights for their property, they will have IDA-approved fixtures and those kinds of things. So residential property owners could use that as a resource. They also have what's called a model lighting code, and their model lighting code recommends that you kind of adopt an overlay within your city that has lighting areas which are administered so that you decide that an area is an area of low light needs, such as a natural resource area. You know, that's basically going to get one regulation, and then another area that is a public school or an area that needs to be well lit has a different set of lighting codes. It's a very comprehensive model code, and it's I don't think it's ever been adopted in its entirety except in areas that are, you know, very exclusive. So we did research that code when we adopted some of these lighting standards. It's part of our zoning code, so revisions to this would follow the same process as any revision to a development regulation, which is a legislative action. It goes to committees and boards and the public for review and a public process, and then when you get it to a point where it's a draft code amendment, you take that to the Planning Commission in a public hearing process, and ultimately the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the City Commission in another public hearing process, and then you adopt a new code revision. So this code was written pre-LED technology, but we do.
What year? Can you tell me the year? Of the code?
2008, I believe, for this one.
Okay.
So that's what I have to share on our current code. Any questions?
I'm going to ask you a question that you don't have to answer at this point, but when did our train station go in?
Oh, I think it was moved on site at 2005, 6.
Okay.
And then it wasn't fully refurbished and with the current tenant improvements until very recently.
No. Okay.
So some of the lighting that went in with the train station is pre-existing, and then others improvements under the canopy, I think, were done through the building permit process.
Jerry?
Shaw brought this to our attention. It must have been in 2014 because I could not find it in the compilation of all the things we've done since 2015, which I was looking at today, which was really impressive, all the stuff that we've been involved in. But in summary, I'm just going to summarize what her comments were, and you've done a great job, Pete, too. It came about the International Dark Sky Association because of observing concerns for observatories in various areas throughout the world. And then it became a wildlife navigation issue in more recent times. I'll talk about that in a second. Energy efficiency was always something that they wanted to see, and effectiveness, because a lot of light was just being directed up rather than to its target. And then the pleasure of humankind enjoying a dark sky kind of situation. And her point, and you made it too, Pete, was that the Dark Sky, International Dark Sky Association, will assist with model ordinances that have been implemented in various regions, and apparently West Lynn was taking this up. I don't know if they ever did it or not. Advocacy, technical assistance. The latest thing that she pointed out to me last night when she called me, and her number's on the bottom of the sheet, I'm sure she'd be willing to talk to anybody. She was one of the founding members of this group about, 10 years ago, Doug? Mm-hmm. So roughly. All right. Was that lights out for migration? I actually heard about this. You all probably heard about this this fall when the Audubon Society, and the biggest chapter in our nation, by the way, is in Portland, Oregon. 40,000 members. They're very effective people. Led a campaign to see if people would turn out certain lighting situations for ease of migratory birds. So the Lights Out for Migration is a new initiative that they have, and they're really concerned about LED, new lighting technologies. And that's what's in the blue lights that you see, blue-white lights on the road now. And it's hard to filter, and it tends to disperse a lot more, so they're really concerned about that. So I would suggest, Shaw told me she's coming back into town for a few months now, and that we get her back here. The people up at the Clackamas Community College that run the observatory, which include astronomer Ken Cameron, he's a volunteer, and some of the Rose City astronomers might have some comments that could help guide us. I'm not sure what to do with this, but I think it's important. It was something that we looked at when she was on this committee. So,
I did want to share that I forgot to. When the Environmental Learning Center went through the detailed development plan review, and you guys were a part of that review, they submitted a photometric plan, an initial plan and a revision. Initially, they had included pedestrian lighting around where the wetlands were and the pathways, and then they removed it. And so I've got a copy of that plan up on the screen behind you. And it's kind of hard to read because when you zoom in, you can see the area that they removed the lighting through the walkway area. So everything in there is shown as 0.0 in terms of the foot candle levels. And then you get over to near where the community room is and the canopy, and they have their light fixtures there, and you can see that the lighting levels next to those fixtures are bumping up in the foot candle range, and so that's what the calculations are based on to meet the code.
Now, is this the only place you're looking for additional lighting? What you're showing there?
There's some, as I zoom out, you can see that there was a parking lot there too with some lighting fixtures.
Yeah.
So those are included. And you can see when you sorry, this is sideways, so you can see right underneath the fixture where the light throw and the levels are fairly high, and then it drops off to 0.2 at the edge here. So those are the kinds of plans that we require as part of the site plan and design review. And it's based on a lighting engineer's stamping the plan and saying it meets the code requirement. Obviously, this is how we would enforce development regulation. If something is added after the fact, after land use review, we're not necessarily going to catch it. And there are situations where lights are added, through a building permit process and that sort of thing. But we're starting to be able to catch that as well, to make sure through our Type 1 site plan review, which we adopted last year through the City Commission. So I think there's much better scrutiny of this sort of thing nowadays, that when it's not just going through a formal land use review, but through a building permit. Yeah.
In talking with Pete today, too, I didn't realize that the existing code that he's been sharing with us does direct developments to have down-directed lighting and not illumination just up into the sky. It's the street light parts that are not yet regulated. I think you shared that with me. Probably could use some help. But the question was just south of college is Rose Holden's project, Beaver Creek concept plan. And I know I've talked to her, and so has Shaw, about using down-directed lighting, and of course was her response. And the developer of Clackmont Cove, Ed Darrell, in the last few weeks we did a development discovery tour, and I asked him about that too. And he said, well, why not? I said, well, would you consider it, even though that's not necessarily a dark sky observing area, would you consider it just because it would make the area possibly more attractive at night? And he said he would too. So it's these public right-of-way issues and some residential lighting, I guess, that might need some attention. But I would suggest, from process standpoint, we let Shaw speak to this and bring some other people from the college in, if that would be okay.
No, that'd be fine. Yep.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that when you're talking about the public right-of-way, it's administered through the Public Works Department and the city engineer, and they have authority with respect to public safety and those sorts of things. So there's a critical need to balance light levels with public safety considerations and those kinds of things. Yeah.
I would presume it's in PGE's interest on the streets to have the light going downward. I mean, I don't not imagine that they.
Yeah, and I think John Lewis may be able to share some of this too with us, because they were involved in changing out those fixtures and working on that. Mm-hmm.
When you're in the middle of the block, you can't see anything, because I walk at 5:30 in the morning and it's really dark.
Yeah, which. I think that's what I've read on some of the IDA materials, or the Dark Sky Association materials, is like the important thing when it comes to being able to see something is not having glare, but being able to see contrast. Mm-hmm. And so just lighting the whole area doesn't necessarily make it safer, and you guys are aware of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Being a woodsman, I can tell you that if there's no lights, you can see fine.
Especially
it's crazy.
Except when my dog does her business, I have to get the flashlight out.
I know that one.
Well, I just know that I've seen so many LED camp lights. Just what people are arming their campsites with are blinding.
Yeah.
And you'll go into parking lots and people pull out their own lighting. LED lighting's powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
And it's amazing stuff, but it almost has its purpose, but needs to not be on a daily basis.
We have Mike Mitchell that wants to speak to this particular question.
Hey, Mike.
Mike Mitchell. I'm an Oregon City resident, and I'll try not to geek out on you here on lighting. I've been in the lighting business for 20 years, and it's real easy to get geeked out about it. First off, I agree 100% that dark sky is a great goal. A couple of mentions of the International Dark Sky Association. If you decide to go down residential road, I would caution you to be a little careful. The IDSA is very well recognized commercially, and commercial lighting manufacturers are very used to creating the kind of photometric reports that are required to get a fixture certified by the IDSA. I'm in the residential side of the business, and that's not something we do. And if you go to their website, there are very few certified fixtures by them for residential, like garage front lights and whatnot. Just because there's a cost, a testing cost, you have to join their association, pay a testing fee, and so forth. And residentially, there has not been that much demand for it, and so we don't spend the money if you don't have to. But I agree completely with the goal. Lighting industry in the last 3 to 5 years has had more change since Thomas Edison. Pete mentioned that the code was pre-LED. There's a section where it calls out for specific bulb types, and that for non-residential areas, there are 5 bulb types called out, and LED is not one of them. And that's probably most of what's being done now. So what you want to try to do if you're going to try to write some code and make changes is they can be written that they're technology agnostic. They spell out color rendering index, color temperature, lumens per watt, efficiency, without saying what the source has to be, because it's going to be changing constantly. So that's that. Just a couple of other thoughts. Jerry mentioned LEDs and blue. LEDs don't have to be blue. They naturally want to be blue, and you have to add phosphors to warm up that color temperature. One of the things that we're discovering, and it's actually pretty recent research, both for human health and for wildlife, at night, anything higher than a color temperature of 3,000 Kelvin, here I go geeking out, sorry, an incandescent light bulb in your house is 2,700 K. That's considered warm. 3,000 is still pretty warm. Most of the LED parking lot fixtures or street lights that I see in town, just by looking at them, I would guess they're at least 4,000, maybe 5,000.
Really?
It's bad for us, and it's bad for wildlife. And they can be done warmer.
Huh.
It's just a little more costly.
Mm-hmm.
The point was made about glare and brightness. All of our vision is based on contrast, and people make a huge mistake at night over lighting an area. You don't need much light. That half-foot candle that Pete was talking about, okay, here's your lighting lesson. A foot candle actually is the amount of light that a candle puts on a surface from 1 foot away. Lumens is the total amount of light output from whatever the source is. Foot candles is how much hits a surface. So that fixture up there is emitting X number of lumens, probably 800, and it's probably putting about 10 foot candles on at Bill's desk. So anyway, here I go. I'm geeking out. I'm sorry.
We love that.
I think it's a great goal. I think you should go down this road. I'm going to keep watching your agenda, and I'll come down and butt in whenever it's going to come up.
What did you call those type of regulations? Where you
technology agnostic or technology neutral, whatever you want to call it. They don't spell out you must use LED or you must use this or that.
Right.
It spells out
the lumens,
lumen output, lumens per watt, which is how efficient the fixture is. LEDs are very efficient. Incandescent is basically a heater that throws out a little bit of light. So that's why we're trying to go away from that. Let's see, what was that? Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So you don't spell out what it has to be. You spell out the performance requirements.
Right, that's the way all regulations should be, or most of them.
Especially in lighting right now, because it's changing constantly.
Automobile light bulbs, I mean, are they the blue light?
They are very blue, and I think they probably do. It may be a cost thing. I don't know why they've decided that blue looks cool on car headlights, but they are really blue most of the time.
Facebook probably.
Seem to have a lot of glare. Versus contrast.
Right.
You know.
And so, am I correct, Pete, that there's nothing in our street light requirement that requires fully shielded downward fixtures?
I don't know what the PGE contract prescribes or what the standard is for PGE. That would be something I have to get back to you on, for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The subdivision that I live in, it was built about 10 years ago, and they are full cutoff, and they were converted to LED. Right behind me, they're not. They're glare bombs.
Mm-hmm.
One of which lights up about half of my backyard and shines in my bedroom window because it's not only the wrong technology, it was put in the wrong place. But that's a whole other story. and that's in a newer subdivision.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's something, to me, that would be
that would be the thing.
place number one to start, is renegotiate whatever that deal is with PGE that requires downlight cutoff fixtures.
My impression, and it's just an impression looking at what they did on Main Street, that those lights are pretty much downward focused.
Down?
Yeah.
What's wrong with downward focus?
No, that's what you want.
That's what we want.
Oh, yeah.
You want the light
that's a
focused
positive
down.
thing.
Yeah, no, you want it going down. I was surprised at the ones they put in that newer subdivision because they're lighting industry, we call them glare bombs because it's just throwing the light everywhere. I think one thing that might happen on that, the traditional old style acorn shape, I think that's what they're trying to emulate in a new fixture, and those were not full cutoff.
That's what you see at the train station.
Right. Right,
And
and I
it
think
shows
it might
light
be
all over the place.
Yeah, but it's an attempt to be historic.
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Wow.
Good advice.
Anything else? Is this something that we would want to take a look at since the technology has changed?
Or follow up at least with the PG&E contract, find out what they're,
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
and
I
then
think
push them that way.
What I'd like to do is get back to you and put it on a future agenda.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. Talk to John Lewis.
Yeah, see what they have to say at the
See
public
what
works.
they have to say. And then we can go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you, Pete.
The next item on our list is website status.
Yeah, okay. So, Willamette Falls TV advertisement for our meeting apparently had a to be announced. And thanks, Jerry, for clarifying where you saw that. We contacted Melody at Willamette Falls, and she's making the corrections, so we should get that taken care of. The website for the city has, we make sure that we have that updated as the second Wednesday of every month, wherever it occurs, so. It's hard to track sometimes because we've got the city calendar and then we've got our NRC website, but it needs to be consistent everywhere. So that should take care of that.
Yeah. I just found it. I don't look at your website, your city website, but I look at Willamette Falls Cable Access, and it's kept on saying to be announced meetings, and I thought, we're more organized than that. I know we are. So.
Reflect well on the schedule. Yeah. Thank you, though. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you jumped over my walking tours.
Oh, I tripped over them. Go ahead, Jerry. I'm sorry.
All right, no problem. I'm going to pass these things down.
Actually, may I suggest,
Sure.
because this is something you do, I'm going to suggest that we do that under communications.
Okay.
Because I've got a couple
I'm
things.
actually
So-
asking you for action, though, tonight on something, which I have to recuse myself and go down front to do. So I can do it then if you like.
Well,
Right.
this is something you specifically are doing, and it's not really part of us. And I was
Well,
just thinking,
it is, because I brought this to the committee back in the fall about could we do these things, and we've tested it and it works, but I want to submit a grant request, I'll be honest with you, to get us some marketing money. So, I mean, as long as I can request that later.
Go ahead, you got it here.
All right,
Go ahead, go ahead.
Here, I'm going to pass this out, and now I'm going to go down front.
I think I got more candle lights.
Foot candles.
Foot candles. I got more foot candles.
Okay. So, the reason I'm here, I'm Jerry Herman, a member of your committee, but I need to come out here because I'm asking for consideration on a grant support letter, all right? Back in the fall, I talked to us about, the group about could we start looking at walking tours, looking at natural history and cultural history combined with an emphasis on the natural history. And Dee Dee and I and about 30 other people I didn't expect to show up tested it, the whole idea, in February on a Saturday, and it really had a lot of support. People really enjoyed it. And so I was trying to figure out a number of sites that we could look at over time. There's a draft letter in front of you, which I'm asking your consideration on. The granting source is Tourism Commission of Clackamas County, the Tourism Development Council. I'm going to look at our work plan for a second, because our work plan that we adopted back in the fall or so, one of the items down near the bottom there talked about incentive programs, the big piece of paper you have in front of you, and it talked about things that we possibly could do, such as possibly NRC interfacing with other tourism agencies for enhanced interpretive activities. You talked about signage, I was talking about tours, things like that. And so really what I'm doing is suggesting that we take advantage of a fund that's available. It's called the Community Partnership Grant. All right? Let me explain, though, if you go to the second page, I'll be real quick, what specifically I'm proposing to do. Dee Dee and I did the promenade walk from basically, that wasn't the municipal elevator, it was from the John McLaughlin House all the way to Willamette Falls. And 30 people showed up. I was really surprised. And they loved the idea of natural history being interpreted, geography, geology, lay of the land as it affected settlement. How does this affect settlement, and why do people settle here? And that tour took an hour and a half. It was timed. It went really well. I appreciated her help. She passed out literature about the Parks Foundation and how to support the Parks Foundation, a little bit about us too. And I think 3 or 4 of these initiatives could be done where we develop themes. One's a promenade. It's done. It worked well. Falls Overlook could be a place where we're stationed to really look at the falls. From the falls, you can really talk a lot about Willamette Valley history, the valley geography, and then in front of you flows, 100,000 cubic feet of water or less. One way or the other, it's amazing to look. And then you can talk about the mills and all that.
Where are you looking at? Where is the overlook that you're going to?
We're talking about 99E Overlook.
Okay.
There,
Yeah.
all right?
Okay.
But on the 25th of this month, we're going to test the second idea. 25th this month is a Saturday. We're going to test what I call the Ports Tour. Here it's listed as a River Natural History Walk from John Storm Park to River Overlook. Well, let me be a little more specific. That route would work very well going from John Storm Park down through Clackamas Park, looking at the serious nature of Clackamas Rapids and what it did to navigation. It was the reason that Oregon City could never become a major port. It was a major river like the Clackamas, we think is benign, is very powerful, intercepting the Willamette, caused huge navigation problems, and created the geography of this area, including an incredible heron rookery that you can see from there. Okay, but on the 25th, we're going to test an idea called the Port of Oregon City, which is from the Legacy Project downriver. Folks here interpret walks through the Legacy Project up to the falls. We're talking about meeting at the parking lot behind the Smurfit building and walking downriver to at least 14th Street and then looping back up to the city, covering some of the cultural history aspects interior to the city, but really the overlook of the river there. You can see the locks from there, talk about river depths and so forth. Another one that I think would work well is Clackamas Cove. And I used to call this, and I still believe it is, Lifelines Lagoon. It still has some has a water quality problem right now, but it'll get solved here. But the cove is in transition. I've been down there with some people that are in this room on a development discovery tour, and we heard from the project managers about how much of a rough territory it's been to work on this thing. 158 days behind schedule at this point, mainly because of things that are going on that they keep running into. But beyond that, the future project, you heard from John Runyon, who came in and spoke to us, will talk about a lot of wildlife enhancements, and we got behind that initiative. We got behind that, and that is now going to occur in there. It'd be nice to know what they're going to look like. So the last couple pages there are an article that was in the Oregon City News. They covered the tour. What I do is I train youth to do the research and then meet with qualified people. Bill is such a person now that he's healthy. I'm going to put him on the grill here because I'd like his help. And anyone else, Doug, you are too. And the youth do the research to determine what the assets are that we're going to look at. We time it out, we test it, and then we do it. And so the people that were doing this tour are young people. You can see here I have a couple actors that work for me, young people. These are all people ages 16 through 24. So what I did is I did this through my organization, my nonprofit called Rivers of Life Center. So my specific request, which is why I'm here, is that the letter that I drafted out there as a concept, I'm going to go to the Community Partnership Grant Program here very shortly. The grant is due by the end of this month with a request for about $3,500 to do marketing. It's marketing and pay the kids to do the research. I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to oversee them. The marketing, we could do this through the city's newsletter, but that's not enough. We need more than that. So it'd probably be an ad or so. And so my letter here request is to you, it reads something like this. It could be changed, whatever. The Natural Resource Committee is an established advisory committee of the City of Oregon City and always seeks opportunities to provide education on issues of natural resources in our community. Youth from a local nonprofit wish to join forces with skilled guides and members of the committee to present entertaining messaging and interpretation in a number of sectors of Oregon City's historic and natural resource areas. These events would be bi-monthly, I'll explain that, and be of interest to citizens and visitors to our community. We hope you can support this. That's my concept at this point. I was going to suggest on a bi-monthly basis in May 27th is Saturday. Saturdays, I think, work best for this kind of thing. We could do a tour in July on the 8th. We could do another tour in September on the 5th. We could do then, I think, in the late fall on October 3rd, which is Saturday, and then a November Saturday when you really see activity at the falls. There's a lot of things that you can see. One of the things that Pete was shocked with was I called him about something, and in the background he heard the arf, arf, arf. The 7 sea lions at Sportcraft are a small gathering. There'll be a lot more than that, and you can walk right down and look at them. You don't have to even be on the dock to see them. And there's a natural history kind of value there. That would be part of the John Storm Park walk. So that's my request if you would consider it. I'll write the grant. The monies would come to my organization. I'll disperse them to take care of the ads and all that kind of thing. We as a team, I think, would benefit by having the public know we're out there doing something that's never been done before. This has never been done before. Cultural history and natural history combined. So that's my request. Any questions?
I'll be happy to put forward a letter. I think we need to expand on to what we do as part of that letter.
Can I ask one question? This makes it look like it's part of the NRC as well, because it says that you join with members of the committee to present entertaining messaging and interpretation. Is this associated with NRC, or it's confusing a little bit?
This is something we did a bus tour 2 years ago. Bus tour took a lot of work. And, you know, we had 40 people on the bus. This could have 40 people on each event without the expense of the bus. All right. So the NRC sponsored the bus tour of natural resource areas 2 years ago. What we were suggesting, and Dee Dee wanted to be a part of this, I don't remember who else did, but was that we would do these walking tours, but these tours need to be planned and be
As an NRC event?
as a joint NRC and
I don't know that we can do that.
okay.
I mean, our role is an advisory to the city commission only.
Okay.
And I don't know that we can do special projects like that. We can write letters of recommendation. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I mean, department heads do it on grants that go to the Metro Enhancement Committee and so forth. That is not an issue.
Okay.
But
Well-
I don't believe we can.
But
we
members could help if they
can,
wanted.
members
Yeah.
could help, yes.
Yeah,
But as
okay.
a body,
All right.
we have to be very careful.
Okay.
We're an activist group in terms of making recommendations to the
Right.
commission.
So NRC members just wouldn't be representing NRC.
That's right.
When they give presentations. It's-
Right.
You just
Yeah.
happen to be an NRC member, you're not speaking for the NRC you're representing.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine. Does that answer your question about the role?
Yeah.
Lynn, or-
I sure could do it. I'd probably expand on it a little bit if I might. But and Jerry, I butchered your names many times. I put single R's and single N's, and so I'll forgive you for a Y not preceded by an E. Neely.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, you know, I can't blame that on my eyes, can I?
No. A lot of people. Most of the EYs are Scotch-Irish, then the Ys are regular Irish. So that's true of Kelly's.
Well, most of the Hermans
So you see
are
both
one N
spellings.
and not two.
Yeah, you spell. Yes. Anyway,
All right,
very good.
all right, thank you.
And that's okay with everybody if I put it in a letter of support?
Oh, yeah.
If-
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Any issue?
Yeah.
No.
That
Okay.
is an exciting idea.
Right. With that, then, we've got the work plan before us.
Yep, you got a copy of your work plan. We had lack of a quorum on the 9th of November, that should say 2016. So this item got tabled, and we probably want to put this on a future agenda in order to go through it in some detail. We don't have a great deal of time left this evening. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to this. It's a working document. It has gaps. The timelines need to be tightened up and filled in completely in some places, and tasks and activities reevaluated on a regular basis as we go through our process monthly. And you should also be aware that with the most recent updates to the city commission goals, which are the left side of the column, the left column here, what we're attempting to do is make sure that our activities and our bylaws line up with city commission goals and activity. So based on what I've heard this evening, we've got a couple of things that are contributing to ongoing activities, and that's really great because it's going to help us focus on the heritage tree process. And then it sounds like we have the addition potentially of a new item, which is of concern. That's okay. We love new items, but we also need to be sure that we're focusing on the ones that we already agreed to.
That's right.
In particular, the ones I wanted to talk to you about briefly is, where are we with respect to the ones that you recommended the city commission fund at the beginning of the year, and that had to do with the stream crossing signage and also the addition of wetlands that are not currently in the Natural Resource Overlay District, which are both significant activities. So that's where we're at right now. So I welcome your comments. Individually, you can send me your comments without having to be at a meeting, as long as you individually email me directly. So if you want time to, And that way we don't run afoul of any public meetings laws. And you can give me your candid thoughts about the work plan, and then I'll compile your comments and put them on the agenda for our next meeting. Okay? Any questions on this? Okay.
I have a question about the priority creeks.
Yeah.
Page 1. Was this having to do with signage or water quality or both?
Signage.
Good. I was hoping so. Wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed that at some length.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, and
It's a really nice layout. I like it.
yeah, it is nice layout.
Yeah, and I have copies of this in Word, so you can keep your own and mark it up as you see fit. I'll send that to you.
We'll go into communications, and the communication I have is this. The Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, at our last meeting, Martin Montalvo was there. He's the Director of Operations for the Public Works. And we've been looking at the possibility of getting signs out on streams that we have worked on. Martin Montalvo says if we could come up with the money, he'd install signs on the streams that we're talking about here.
Good.
And it turned out that we have monies that we did not know, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, that we did not know we could spend on that kind of signage as part of an education program. And so Martin has indicated Public Works could do the installation if we provided the sign, the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council provided the signs. We would want, of course, to use our logo as part of it. And somewhere I've got a whole bunch of copies of it, which I've hidden from myself. But anyway, what did I do with them? There's several. I'll get those out to you in a minute. Oh, here we go. We'd make sure to get a stream on there. I'm not sure we'd have to identify what's on it, but this is the logo we use on our letterhead. And I'll just send them around this direction. And but then put the name of the stream on this logo. And so if this is all right with the committee, I could go back to the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, and they could approve the funds, and we could then provide those funds to Public Works. Well, we probably produce, with their guidance, produce the signs and provide them to Public Works. So it may not be a necessary budget item for the City Commission to deal with. We're able to do that.
Yeah, so we can clarify with Martin that they can produce the signs at their shop and install them. Is that what they're thinking?
Yeah. They were talking about the installation, not necessarily the production.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Do you have a sign shop? We saw it. I said they do have a sign shop. We saw it.
We took that picture. We do have a sign shop.
Well, we'll go ahead and find out if they could actually produce the signs, and we pay for the production of the signs.
Yeah.
This logo, would it say lampreys?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It would not necessarily have to have the title. Okay. This is what we have on our letterhead.
Okay.
This is the basic logo we'd use. We'd have to get the street. We'd have to get the stream name on there.
Right.
Instead.
Would you have lampreys in the middle as images? Just asking.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why, you got problems with lampreys?
No, they're pretty wild. They're pretty wild looking. It's effective if you. I know in the lamprey.
Every single watershed council has a salmon. We decided to do a lamprey.
You got a good one. You got a good one.
In Abernathy Creek, in 2015, just on certain segments of it, they identified 300 reds of lampreys.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
well,
cool.
then on with the lamprey.
And you can use them as candles too.
Yeah.
They're that oily.
Yeah.
You have to drive them off first. So. Anyway, so yeah, that's the thing I wanted to deal with, and I think the Watershed Council would like to look at the also that there's interest also on the part of the college to have signage there as part of the ELC too. So possibly having it on their loop road there, it might be a possibility
Good,
as well.
very good, very good.
Nice.
That's
So-
a good idea.
So that was good news. So go through then and ask if anybody else has things to talk about. So,
Yeah, personally, no.
Well, I'll speak right up.
oh, wait a minute. I'm going to sit in order here.
We're waiting to hear from you.
And I want to hear from this gentleman. How are you feeling?
Feeling good.
great.
Everything's stabilized.
That's great. I'm glad you're back. I'm
We are
so
very
pleased to
much.
see you here.
Thank you. Sorry I missed out.
Did you have to get trimmed? I mean, what happened? You-
Stylist said, "Hey, why don't you try something different for a change?"
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah,
You
why
look-
not?
You look less like Woodsman. Huh?
Younger.
Did you bury it?
No, I should have.
Did he?
No. I might as well mention that, I've been going to the Oregon City Parks Foundation meetings, and they had a tremendous fundraiser locally. And since this is on television, every Tuesday at Oregon City Brewing, they're doing a fundraiser for our nonprofits in our city.
Where is it again?
Oregon City Brewing.
Okay.
They give $1 a pint. That's that's generous. Yay! We need more of our city to jump into it with our. It's really nice.
Every day, you say?
Nope, just Tuesdays.
Tuesdays.
Just Tuesdays. But they every month they choose a new nonprofit.
Oh.
So this particular time, it just happens to be Oregon City Parks Foundation.
So
But
we
every
need to
month
get
is
down
a
there
different
on
one.
Tuesdays.
So the Oregon Greater Watershed might want to talk to them
That's
for
what you could.
March, April, April. But every
suggest
Tuesday,
Okay.
you buy their beer and they throw in $1.
Pints for the parks.
Pints for the parks.
Yeah,
There you go.
that's
For this month,
Yeah.
anyway.
Pints for
Every person that buys a brew there.
Yes, but
Okay.
you have to you have to have their own brew. But I thought that was really clever, and yet kudos for
That's
our
good. That's
cities
really
that are
good.
involved. And
You
That's-
neglected to tell us about how rich they will be when the bottle bill doubles to 10 cents a container.
Yeah.
Because you're the one collecting all those containers.
well, not only me. It's actually several people on it, but that is it's a huge bottle drive, and we're actually working with the city to reach out to city. If you'll notice back behind here, there's a container to grab every nickel and water bottles and soda bottles, anything with a deposit. In our city buildings, I'm working on our counties. Even if they're collecting it for their own nonprofits, we just want to see what we can get from the Oregon City Parks Foundation. A lot of private. We have like 15 private businesses that are collecting for us, and we're hoping we're spread this out to public, and then we're going to work with the city at the concert series and hand it out to our public and do the big drop-in, collecting from everyone. If you just donate one bag a year, that would make a very significant difference.
She's very dedicated. My crew was working at the end of the Oregon Trail on something, and all of a sudden a pickup pulled up, and she was there, and I thought, oh. And I thought she was going to talk to me about how great the end of the Oregon Trail looked. She said, I'm here for the bottles and the cans.
Yepper. And I'm after those heritage trees, too, now.
Very organized team. Very well organized.
Mike, are you on the foundation too? Yes. Any other members here? Anybody here? Paul's on the foundation too. Well, thank you all.
We should be holding up. We should be up our banners of our blue bags.
That's great.
Yay!
Great.
And you get over here. We need you too. It's an exciting thing. A lot of good
Is
things.
this a quorum from the foundation? It wouldn't make any difference anyway. So, Jerry,
Oh, can we talk about agenda items now, or is that the wrong time? This the wrong
for next time?
Future agenda items?
Future
Yeah.
agenda?
Since Mike is here, the Parks Foundation joined forces with others. We're trying to do something with Waterboard Park on the hillside, and I was hoping to see the presentation that we would do. Would you be okay with that? About where we're at?
Right now?
Yeah, not now. No, at a future meeting.
Sure,
Yeah, you and myself and Mr.
Boyce.
Brian?
Boyce.
Yeah, can't think. Brian
was
would be
gonna
fine,
mention
yeah.
that.
All right, because we've been trying to make an omelet out of the problem on the hillside at Waterboard Park. This has nothing to do with building public works. It's just something that I think we want to share with you. And then the other thing was the water quality issues in the cove. I don't know that I referred to the plan right, but John Runyon completed a plan and submitted to the city that outlined all the habitat enhancement possibilities and problems in the cove, including water quality. And I don't know that I have that name right, but that is a public document now, and I'd like to see a chance for him to come back in and talk to us, and us get behind really suggesting some things to the city commission about water quality, because when we took the developer and all the commission members and some planning commission members like Mike and others on a discovery tour, it's very clear that people don't know what to do about the water quality. And unless it's addressed, the cove will be green again this summer. And it's been green for 3 years because the tide stopped flushing it. The tide can't do its work anymore, cannot get over the gravel sill. That's one issue. So I'd like to see that on the agenda for future.
Right. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to do anything about the water quality this year, though.
I have an idea.
Well, the point, if it involves city money, the point is, if we're going to get the Harbor Trust money, that ought to be our real focus.
Right. No, it doesn't involve money. It involves enthusiasm.
You're going to throw rocks in the river again?
Darn right, throw rocks. In an organized manner.
We're all going to paddle real fast and stir the water up.
Can you guarantee you won't hit any lamprey in the process?
We won't hurt those reds. Anyway, it'd be nice to have a little update, I think, and all the habitat stuff.
It would be.
So, okay.
Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none?
Before we adjourn,
okay.
just want to clarify the future agenda items for April 12th. So Jerry's requested an update on the Cove water quality. We'll have a work session on the heritage trees.
Okay.
Do we make a time for that? Was it going to be for this meeting?
No, it's going to be at 7, and we'll have the meeting at a later time. We'll post the meeting at 8.
Yeah.
My problem with that is I get up at 4:30 in the morning, and I'm already past my bedtime.
Yeah.
So
we'll have to
going
move
to a
quickly.
meeting till 10, I may be leaving at 9.
That's all right.
That's
We'll
okay.
excuse you.
Or it'll be sound if it'll be snoring up here.
Sorry.
And because of the time issue, we're putting on that extra hour. Jerry, I want to request maybe the presentation from the Parks Foundation be 2 months from now, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. 2 months out. Okay. And
Anything else for a future agenda item at this point?
This is sure a big committee. I've never seen so many people. This is great.
This is great.
It's really good.
We've got our full complement.
We didn't even
That's
give away
wonderful.
any stickers or anything. I'm all about, can we reward somebody with
we have an update on the lighting code information from John Lewis.
Okay.
And an update on the stream crossing work with Martin Montalvo.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not have you hold Martin's update for another month too.
Couple months. All right. Thanks.
Because by that time we might have more to say.
Right. So the final thing is I've got an updated roster for everybody. It's in your packets with contact information and your terms. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Great to have you on board.
Yeah.
What else was I going to say about that? We don't have a secretary, so if you guys are feeling the need to have one, I think it might be beneficial in terms of that person working to clarify the agenda items before I publish the agenda, because I know there's been a little bit of communication issue there. So we can potentially explore secretary nominations at the next meeting.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And therefore, close meeting.
All right. Good.